My name is Maddie, and I'm 68 years old. After 10 years as a widow, I never expected my greatest heartbreak would come from my own son. That evening, in their pristine living room, Jackson stared coldly at me, while his fiancée, Veronica, listed my options: become their unpaid servant or disappear from their lives. I felt my chest tighten, but something else stirred within me: determination. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button. What would you do if someone you loved your whole life suddenly treated you like you were disposable? For 38 wonderful years, I was married to Harold Stevens, the kindest, most hardworking man I've ever known. We built our life together in a cozy 2-story colonial in Portland, Maine, just 3 blocks from the ocean. The salt air would drift through our windows on summer evenings while we sat on the porch swing Harold built for our 10th anniversary. That house witnessed the raising of our 2 children, countless holiday gatherings, and the quiet comfort of our retirement years together. Our son Jackson was always the ambitious one. Even as a child, he'd build elaborate structures with his blocks, carefully planning each step. That methodical nature served him well as he grew up to become a successful civil engineer specializing in bridge design. But Jackson had another tendency that worried me even when he was young. He would do almost anything to please the people he wanted to impress, especially girlfriends. "Mom, what do you think Jessica would like for her birthday?" He'd ask about his high school girlfriend. When I suggested something thoughtful based on her interests, he'd shake his head. "But she mentioned wanting a designer purse. I should probably get that instead, right?" Despite this people-pleasing tendency, Jackson and I maintained a close relationship into his adulthood. Before everything changed, we'd have dinner together, at least twice a week. He'd tell me about his projects at work, and I'd share stories from my volunteer work at the local literacy center. We'd laugh about old family memories and discuss books we'd both read. It was comfortable, warm, the kind of mother-son relationship I'd always hoped for. My daughter Amanda took a different path. After college, she moved to San Francisco for a job in tech and met her husband Daniel there. They gave me 2 beautiful grandchildren, Lily and Ethan, who I primarily saw through weekly video calls. Amanda would apologize for not visiting more often, but I understood. 3,000 miles is no small distance, especially with young children. "Mom, we'll fly you out here more often," Amanda would promise, and she kept her word. Twice a year, I'd spend 2 weeks in their sunny California home. Those visits sustained me, especially after Harold passed away. Harold's death was sudden. A massive stroke took him while he was tending to his beloved vegetable garden. One moment, he was harvesting tomatoes, the next, he was gone. The paramedics said he likely didn't suffer, but that brought little comfort during those first dark months. What did help was knowing Harold had planned for this possibility. He left me financially secure with his pension savings and a substantial life insurance policy. Our house was paid off, and my own retirement fund was healthy after years of careful planning. Money would not be a concern for me, a fact that would later become important. After the initial grief subsided, I created a fulfilling routine. Mornings began with coffee in Harold's garden, which I maintained in his memory. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I volunteered teaching adults to read at the community center. Wednesdays meant book club with friends I'd known for decades. Weekends often involved visits with local friends or video calls with Amanda's family. 2 years ago, Jackson moved back to Portland after ending a 5-year relationship with a woman named Diane. He bought a house just 20 minutes from mine, close enough for regular visits but far enough for independence. Our twice-weekly dinners became a comforting ritual, sometimes at my place where I'd cook his childhood favorites, and sometimes at local restaurants where he'd insist on paying. "You took care of me for decades, Mom," he'd say. "Let me get this one." Then came the dinner where everything began to change. Jackson called on a Tuesday, his voice unusually animated. "Mom, I'm bringing someone special to dinner tomorrow. Her name is Veronica and, well, I really want you to meet her." I was thrilled. Jackson hadn't shown interest in dating since his breakup with Diane. I spent the next day preparing, cleaning the house, making my special roast chicken with rosemary potatoes, and baking an apple pie from scratch using Harold's mother's recipe. At exactly 6:30, my doorbell rang. Jackson stood there beaming his arm around a strikingly beautiful woman with sleek dark hair, impeccable makeup, and a designer outfit that looked more appropriate for a high-end restaurant than my homey dining room. "Mom, this is Veronica Williams. Veronica, this is my mother, Maddie." Veronica extended a manicured hand, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Charmed," she said, glancing around my living room with an expression I couldn't quite place. "Jackson has told me so much about you." Something about her tone made me doubt the sincerity of her words, but I pushed the thought aside. For Jackson's sake, I was determined to make a good impression. "It's wonderful to meet you, Veronica. Dinner's almost ready. Would you like a tour of the house while we wait?" "I'm sure it won't take long," she replied with a small laugh that felt somewhat dismissive. As I showed them around, I noticed Veronica's subtle grimaces at my comfortable but admittedly dated decor. When I proudly showed her the garden Harold had planted, she merely nodded and checked her phone. I caught Jackson watching her reactions, anxiously adjusting his own responses to match hers. During dinner, I learned that Veronica was 32, a marketing director at a national retail chain, and had moved to Portland from Boston for a promotion 6 months ago. She spoke confidently about her career achievements and future plans, rarely asking questions about me or showing interest in family stories. When Jackson mentioned our tradition of watching old movies together on Sunday afternoons, Veronica's expression tightened. "Well, that sounds quaint," she said, "but Jackson and I usually have brunch with my colleagues on Sundays. Networking is crucial in my field." Jackson nodded quickly. "Right, of course. Maybe we could do movies occasionally, Mom, when Veronica has other commitments." I recognized the pattern immediately, the same people-pleasing behavior I'd seen throughout his life, but more pronounced. By the end of the evening, I had a sinking feeling about this relationship, but kept my concerns to myself. Jackson was a grown man, and I had to respect his choices. Little did I know that dinner was just the beginning of a painful journey that would test my love for my son and ultimately change the course of my life forever. The changes in Jackson were subtle at first. A missed phone call here, a canceled dinner there. When we did meet, Veronica was almost always present, directing the conversation and frequently checking her watch, as if our time together was a scheduled appointment she was eager to conclude. 3 months after our first meeting, Jackson texted me on a Tuesday morning. "Big news! Mom asked Veronica to marry me last night, and she said yes, dinner tomorrow to celebrate." I stared at my phone in disbelief. 3 months seemed incredibly fast, especially for my cautious, methodical son. But I replied with appropriate enthusiasm and began planning a special engagement celebration dinner. The next evening, I welcomed them with champagne and a handmade banner congratulating the couple. Veronica frowned slightly at the decorations. "We were thinking something a bit more sophisticated," she said, removing the banner while Jackson looked on silently. "Maybe we should have gone to Bertelli's instead." Bertelli's was the most expensive restaurant in Portland. Throughout dinner, Veronica critiqued everything from my choice of china, so traditional, to the temperature of the roast, slightly overdone, isn't it? When I brought out a photo album to show her some pictures of Jackson as a child, she barely glanced at it. "Shouldn't we be looking forward, not backward?" she said with a tight smile. "We need to discuss wedding plans." As they outlined their vision, it became clear that I was expected to contribute financially, but not offer opinions. When I suggested including some family traditions in the ceremony, Veronica dismissed the idea immediately. "We're going for a very modern aesthetic," she explained, as if to a child. "Those old traditions would throw off the entire concept." Jackson, who had grown up loving our family traditions, simply nodded in agreement. After they left, I called my daughter Amanda in California. 3 months, Mom," she said, concern evident in her voice. "That seems way too fast. What's she like? I tried to be fair in my description, mentioning Veronica's accomplishments and confidence, but Amanda picked up on my hesitation. "You don't like her?" Amanda stated. "Mom, you like everyone. This is a red flag." "I'm trying," I insisted, "for Jackson's sake." The following weekend, my best friend Eleanor came over for coffee. After hearing about Veronica, she didn't mince words. "Sounds like she's isolating him from you," Eleanor observed. "Classic control tactic. Does she do this with his friends too?" I realized I didn't know. Jackson had stopped mentioning his friends altogether. Over the next few months, the situation deteriorated. Jackson and Veronica purchased a house in an upscale neighborhood about 15 minutes from mine. A sleek, modern home that reflected Veronica's taste entirely. At their housewarming party, I overheard Veronica telling her friends, "We had to completely gut the place. The previous owners had such outdated taste. Reminded me of my future mother-in-law's house." They laughed as I pretended not to hear. Then the favors began. It started innocuously enough. "Maddie, since you're not working, would you mind picking up our dry cleaning?" Veronica asked one day. "We're both so swamped at work." Soon the requests multiplied. Grocery shopping, waiting for deliveries, picking up prescriptions. Then it expanded to household chores. "You're always saying you want to help," Veronica pointed out when I hesitated about cleaning their entire house before a dinner party. "This would really help us," Jackson reinforced her requests. "Mom, please, Veronica's under a lot of pressure at work. It would mean a lot to both of us." I found myself becoming an unpaid housekeeper gardener and errand runner. When I completed these tasks, the thanks were minimal and often accompanied by criticism. "The windows still have streaks," Veronica would point out. Or, "This isn't the brand of coffee I specifically asked for." One afternoon, after spending 3 hours weeding their extensive gardens, Veronica inspected my work with a frown. "You missed an entire section," she said, pointing to an area I had definitely cleared. "And you've arranged the potted plants all wrong. Jackson, don't you think your mother should redo this?" Jackson looked uncomfortable, but nodded. "Maybe you could spend a little more time on it, Mom. You know how important the garden is to Veronica." I was baffled. The Jackson I knew would never have spoken to me that way. When I tried to talk to him privately about Veronica's behavior, he became defensive. "She's just particular about things, Mom. And she's right. You do have a lot of free time. We both work 60-hour weeks. Is it really so much to ask for a little help?" "There's a difference between help and servitude," I replied, immediately regretting my words when I saw his expression harden. "If you don't want to help us, just say so," he snapped. I backed down, not wanting to damage our relationship further. But that evening, I received a call from Amanda. "Mom, I just got off the phone with Jackson. He said you're being difficult with Veronica. What's going on?" After I explained the situation, Amanda was silent for a moment. "Mom, this isn't normal. They're taking advantage of you. You need to establish some boundaries before this gets worse." But before I could act on her advice, Veronica sent a group text to Jackson and me. "Family meeting tomorrow night, 7 p.m. sharp. Important matters to discuss. Attendance mandatory." The formal, commanding tone sent a chill through me. Something told me this family meeting would change everything. The next evening, I arrived at Jackson and Veronica's house precisely at 7, determined to remain calm regardless of what happened. The front door was unlocked, so I entered and made my way to their minimalist living room, where Veronica sat at the head of the dining table with a laptop open before her. Jackson sat to her right, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Good, you're punctual," Veronica said without greeting me. "We have a lot to cover. No offer of refreshments, no small talk. Just straight to business." "Please sit." She gestured to a chair across from them, positioning me as if I were at a job interview rather than a family gathering. I complied, folding my hands in my lap to hide their slight trembling. "Veronica and I have been discussing our future," Jackson began, but Veronica immediately took over. "As you know, Jackson and I are getting married in 4 months," she stated. This represents a significant life transition, and we need to finalize certain arrangements. She turned her laptop toward me, revealing a PowerPoint presentation titled Family Restructuring Plan. I nearly laughed, thinking it was a joke, but their serious expressions stopped me. First item, Veronica continued, clicking to the next slide. Household support structure. What followed was essentially a job description for me. According to their plan, I would be responsible for cleaning their house twice weekly, maintaining their garden, preparing meals 3 evenings a week, running errands during business hours, and eventually providing childcare when they decided to have children. You've mentioned wanting to be involved in our lives, Veronica said, as if offering me a gift. This formalizes your role in a way that benefits everyone. I glanced at Jackson, waiting for him to acknowledge the absurdity of this proposal, but he nodded along as if this were perfectly reasonable. Next item, Veronica continued, financial restructuring. This slide revealed their expectation that I would sell my house and invest a significant portion of the proceeds in their mortgage and renovation plans. The remainder would go toward their future children's education funds. Property values in your neighborhood have plateaued, Veronica explained. It makes more financial sense to liquidate now and consolidate resources. Where exactly would I live? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. We've identified several very nice retirement communities, Veronica replied, clicking to show brochures for assisted living facilities. Or if you prefer, we could convert our basement into an in-law suite. That would make you more available for the responsibilities we've outlined. My mind reeled. They weren't just asking me to help out. They were proposing I surrender my independence, my home, and my financial security to become their live-in housekeeper. This isn't reasonable, I finally said. I have my own life, my own home. I'm happy to help occasionally, but this is excessive. Veronica's expression hardened. We've put a lot of thought into this plan. It optimizes family resources and gives you purpose. My life already has purpose, I replied, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. Mom! Jackson interjected, his voice taking on a patronizing tone I'd never heard before. You're living alone in a house that's too big for you. You're getting older. This arrangement would ensure you're taken care of. Taken care of? I echoed. Or taking care of you and Veronica. This attitude isn't helpful, Veronica snapped. We're offering you integration into our family unit. Many older parents would be grateful for such an opportunity. I looked directly at Jackson. Is this really what you want, for your mother to become your household staff? A flicker of doubt crossed his face before Veronica placed her hand over his. We've discussed this extensively, she answered for him. This plan best serves everyone's needs. Jackson straightened, seeming to draw resolve from her touch. Mom, you have 2 choices. Either you accept this arrangement and help support our new family, or... He hesitated, and Veronica finished for him. Or you remove yourself from our lives quietly. We can't have this constant tension and resistance. The room seemed to tilt around me. My own son was giving me an ultimatum: become their servant or disappear. Jackson, I whispered, I'm your mother. And Veronica is my future wife, he replied coldly. I've chosen her as my new family. I need you to respect that. Veronica nodded approvingly. As I always say, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And right now, Maddie, you're becoming a problem. I sat in stunned silence, absorbing the full impact of what was happening. The son I had raised, nurtured, and loved unconditionally for 40 years was discarding me for failing to serve his fiancée's demands. Something shifted inside me in that moment. A lifetime of accommodation and maternal sacrifice, giving way to a sudden, crystal-clear recognition of my own worth. I stood up slowly, gathered my purse, and smiled at them both. I appreciate your presentation, I said calmly. You've made things very clear. So you'll cooperate? Veronica asked, already triumphant. I'll need some time to process this, I replied. But don't worry, you'll have my answer very soon. As I walked out of their house, my legs somehow steadied despite the emotional earthquake within. I realized I already knew exactly what my answer would be, and it would shock them both. The drive home passed in a blur. Inside my house, the home Harold and I had shared for decades, I finally allowed myself to break down. I sobbed until my throat was raw, grieving not just for the relationship I'd lost with Jackson, but for the son I thought I knew. When the tears finally subsided, I made myself a cup of tea and called Amanda. It was late in California, but she answered immediately. Mom, what's wrong? You never call this late. I recounted the entire family meeting, trying to keep my voice steady but failing several times. Amanda listened without interrupting, though I could hear her sharp intakes of breath. I can't believe Jackson would do this, she finally said, her voice tight with anger. This woman has completely warped his mind. I don't even recognize him anymore, I admitted. Mom, you need to get away from there. Pack your things and come stay with us in San Francisco. We have plenty of room, and the kids would love having you here. The offer was tempting, to be surrounded by family who genuinely valued me, but something held me back. I appreciate that, sweetheart, but running to you would be exchanging one form of dependence for another. I think I need something different. What are you thinking? Amanda asked. I'm not entirely sure yet, I replied honestly. But I know I need to create my own path forward. After we hung up, I spent the night researching options. By morning, I had the outline of a plan. My first call was to Howard Greenfield, the attorney who had handled Harold's estate. Maddie, it's been too long, Howard greeted me warmly. What can I do for you? I explained the situation with Jackson and Veronica, including their expectations regarding my home and finances. Howard's response was immediate and firm. We need to protect your assets. Based on what you're telling me, they may escalate their demands. Let's meet this afternoon. By the end of our meeting, we had updated my will, removing Jackson as the primary beneficiary and dividing my estate between Amanda and several charities Harold and I had supported over the years. I also created a power of attorney document naming Amanda, not Jackson, as my decision-maker should I become incapacitated. Jackson will still receive something, I asked, not wanting to disinherit my son entirely despite recent events. Yes, a modest trust, Howard confirmed. But the bulk of your estate will be protected from any influence his fiancée might exert. Next, I contacted Susan Bolton, a real estate agent recommended by Eleanor. Unlike Veronica's suggestion, Susan confirmed that property values in my neighborhood were actually rising substantially. If you're serious about selling, Maddie, we could list immediately. The market is hot right now. List it, I decided. But I'd like a flexible closing date. That evening, I began researching retirement communities, but not the institutional facilities Veronica had suggested. Instead, I explored active adult communities in coastal areas, places where I could maintain independence while enjoying a supportive community. As I browsed, an advertisement caught my eye. Senior volunteers needed help build schools in Costa Rica. Experience the Pura Vida while making a difference. I clicked through to a website describing a program for seniors to volunteer abroad, living in modest but comfortable accommodations while contributing to community projects. The minimum commitment was 3 months with options to extend. A photo showed a group of smiling seniors painting a schoolhouse mountains visible in the background. Something about their expressions, purposeful, joyful, free, resonated deeply with me. On impulse, I requested more information. By midnight, I had received detailed materials and scheduled a video call with the program coordinator for the next day. Maria Gonzalez, the coordinator, was a warm, enthusiastic woman in her 50s who answered all my questions patiently. Many of our volunteers are at transition points in their lives, she explained. Some are newly retired, others recently widowed. Some, like you, are redefining family relationships. What they find here is purpose and community. The program cost was reasonable, especially considering it included accommodation and meals. With my finances, I could easily participate and still have substantial savings for whatever came next. "Do you speak Spanish?" Maria asked. "Not a word beyond what I've picked up from television," I admitted. She laughed. "No problem. We offer basic language classes and many locals speak some English. You'd be surprised how quickly you can learn in an immersive environment." After our call, I felt a surge of excitement I hadn't experienced in years. That evening, I signed up for basic Spanish lessons online and began sorting through my belongings, deciding what to keep, what to store with Amanda, and what to sell or donate. Within days, my house was on the market. My passport was renewed, and I had submitted my application to the volunteer program. As I sorted through decades of possessions, I felt lighter with each item I let go. I hadn't heard from Jackson since the family meeting, and I decided not to contact him until my plans were finalized. This was my journey now, and for once, I was putting myself first. 2 weeks after listing my house, Susan called with news that nearly made me drop the phone. "Maddie, we have an offer. 20% above asking price, all cash with a 45-day close." The number she quoted was staggering, nearly twice what I had expected based on nearby sales. The buyers, a young surgeon and her wife, had fallen in love with the character of the home and the established garden. "They want to know if you'd be willing to leave some of the mature plants in the garden," Susan added. "Apparently, they're avid gardeners themselves." The thought of Harold's beloved garden continuing under caring hands brought tears to my eyes. "Yes, I'd like that very much." That same day, I received confirmation of my acceptance into the Costa Rica volunteer program. My start date was set for exactly 7 weeks away. Perfect timing with the house sale. I was boxing up books when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Jackson's car in my driveway. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. Jackson stood there looking agitated, Veronica right behind him with an expression that could curdle milk. "Mom, what's going on?" Jackson demanded, pushing past me into the foyer. "Mrs. Patterson next door said there was a sold sign in your yard." "Hello to you too," I replied calmly. "Yes, I've sold the house. The closing is in about 6 weeks. Veronica stepped forward. Without consulting us, after our discussion about family resources, "I wasn't aware I needed permission to sell my own property," I said. Jackson looked around at the boxes lining the hallway. "Where are you planning to go? One of those retirement homes we showed you? I've made other arrangements." "What arrangements?" Veronica pressed. "We had a plan." "No," I corrected her. "You had a plan. I never agreed to it." Jackson ran his hand through his hair in frustration. "Mom, be reasonable. We're trying to help you. By making me your housekeeper and taking my home and savings," I asked quietly. "That's not fair," he protested. "We were offering you integration into our family unit." "On your terms only," I pointed out. "That's not family, Jackson. That's servitude." Veronica's face hardened. "So, what exactly is your plan? Where are you going?" I considered how much to reveal and decided on a partial truth. "I'm traveling for a while. After that, I'll decide on my next step." "Traveling?" Jackson looked bewildered. "Alone at your age." "I'm 68, not 98, I replied. "And yes, alone. I'm quite capable." "This is ridiculous," Veronica snapped. "You're being selfish. We were counting on your support." The word selfish ignited something in me. Decades of putting everyone else's needs before my own suddenly crystallized into righteous indignation. Selfish, I raised my son as a single mother for over half his childhood after his father died. I worked full-time while maintaining a home and supporting his every activity and dream. I've spent the past 6 months running errands and doing chores for two fully capable adults without compensation or appreciation. And when I decline to hand over my life savings and become your unpaid servant, I'm selfish. Jackson had the grace to look ashamed, but Veronica was undeterred. What about your financial contribution to our future? The house proceeds should at least partially go toward your grandchildren's education fund. I laughed, genuinely amused by her audacity. Veronica, I don't owe you or Jackson my home or my savings. Those are mine to use as I see fit. But family takes care of family, Jackson insisted weakly. Yes, they do, I agreed. With respect, love, and mutual support, not demands and ultimatums. Veronica grabbed Jackson's arm. This is getting us nowhere. Come on, we need to talk privately. As they turned to leave, Jackson paused. Mom, please don't make any hasty decisions. We can work something out. I already have made my decision, I said gently. And it's not hasty. It's probably the most carefully considered choice I've made in years. After they left, I called Amanda to update her. You're going to Costa Rica, she exclaimed. Mom, that's amazing, but aren't you nervous? Terrified, I admitted, but also more excited than I've been in years. The following days brought a flurry of activity. I arranged for my most treasured possessions to be shipped to Amanda for safekeeping. I donated clothing furniture and household items to local charities. I scheduled a goodbye dinner with Eleanor and other close friends. Jackson made several attempts to change my mind, each less demanding than the last, as he realized I was serious. Veronica, meanwhile, became increasingly hostile, even suggesting they might challenge the house sale legally, a threat Howard quickly assured me was baseless. The day before my departure, I finished cleaning out the last of my belongings. The house echoed with emptiness, yet I felt curiously full, of purpose, anticipation, and a newfound sense of self-determination. That evening, Jackson came alone, no Veronica in sight. He stood awkwardly in the nearly empty living room where he had once played as a child. So, you're really leaving tomorrow? He asked. Yes, my flight's at 10. Where exactly are you going? I hesitated, then decided to be honest. Costa Rica. I've joined a volunteer program helping to build schools in rural areas. His eyes widened. You're going to build schools, Mom, that's crazy inappropriate for someone my age, I supplied. I was going to say impressive, he said quietly. But why so far away? I looked at my son, truly looked at him, seeing both the man he had become and the boy he had been. Because I need to rediscover who I am outside of being your mother. I've spent my entire adult life defining myself through others, as Harold's wife, as your and Amanda's mother. Now I need to find out who Maddie is on her own terms. He nodded slowly. I guess I understand that, but will you come back? Eventually, but not to this house and not to be at anyone's beck and call. I'm sorry, he said suddenly. I didn't see what was happening, how Veronica was treating you, how I was letting her. I know, I replied, and that's why I can still love you, even while I'm disappointed in your choices. We parted with an awkward hug, the future of our relationship uncertain, but not entirely broken. As I watched him drive away, I felt a mixture of sadness and liberation. The next morning, I took one last walk through the empty house, saying goodbye to the home that had sheltered so many memories. Then I closed the door, handed the keys to Susan for the final walkthrough, and climbed into the waiting taxi. Airport, please. I said, my voice steady, and my heart lighter than it had been in months. As the plane took off, carrying me toward a future I could never have imagined even weeks earlier, I realized I was smiling. At 68 years old, I wasn't ending a chapter. I was beginning an entirely new book. The humid air of San Jose, Costa Rica hit me like a warm blanket as I exited the airport. Maria Gonzalez was waiting with a colorful welcome sign bearing my name. Bienvenida a Costa Rica, Maddie. She greeted me with a warm hug. How was your flight? Long but worth it, I replied, already feeling a world away from the tension of the past months. The 2-hour drive to the volunteer village gave me my first glimpse of the lush Costa Rican landscape. Towering mountains, dense forests, and colorful villages dotting the countryside. Maria pointed out sights along the way, mixing English explanations with basic Spanish phrases. Repeat after me, she instructed. Buenos dias. Good morning. Buenos dias. I attempted making Maria laugh at my pronunciation. We'll work on that, she promised. The volunteer village consisted of simple but comfortable cabins arranged around a central community building. Solar panels glinted on the rooftops, and a small garden flourished behind the kitchen building. This will be your home, Maria said, showing me to a cozy cabin with a small porch overlooking a valley of coffee plants. You'll share with Judith from Canada, but she's visiting her daughter this week, so you have time to settle in. That first evening, I met the other volunteers at a community dinner. 15 seniors from various countries, all with different stories, but united by a desire to contribute meaningfully. There was Robert, a retired architect from Australia, helping design the school buildings. Elsa, a former kindergarten teacher from Sweden leading educational programs. And Howard, a widower from Chicago, who joked that he came because his children kept trying to set him up on dates. Best decision I ever made, Howard told me over dinner. Been here 9 months already. Extended my stay twice. The next morning, I joined the orientation tour of the current project, a primary school in a village 20 minutes away. Children ran to greet our van, excited to see the abuelos extranjeros, foreign grandparents, as they called us. My assigned role utilized my organizational skills, coordinating supply deliveries and keeping track of project timelines. It was challenging work, especially with the language barrier, but deeply satisfying in a way my chores for Jackson and Veronica had never been. The days quickly fell into a pleasant rhythm. Mornings began with yoga or gentle exercise sessions led by different volunteers. Work at the school site occupied most of the day with a long break during the hottest hours. Evenings brought Spanish lessons, community dinners, and occasional cultural presentations from local residents. My cabin mate Judith returned after a week, a vibrant 70-year-old widow from Toronto with a wicked sense of humor and a talent for watercolor painting. We became fast friends, often sitting on our porch in the evenings, sipping local coffee and sharing stories. My daughter thought I was having a nervous breakdown when I signed up for this, Judith confessed one evening. Now she's planning to visit with my grandkids next month. People underestimate us oldies. I agreed, thinking of Jackson's disbelief at my decision. I had sent Amanda several emails with photos of my new surroundings, but I hadn't heard from Jackson since leaving the States. 3 weeks into my stay, Maria introduced me to her mother, Elena, a widow in her 70s who taught traditional cooking at the local community center. You should join her class, Maria suggested. It's mostly in Spanish, but cooking is its own language. I accepted the invitation, and soon Tuesday evenings found me learning to make gallo pinto empanadas and other Costa Rican specialties alongside local women who patiently corrected my Spanish and laughed at my kitchen mishaps. Elena and I developed a special bond despite our limited shared vocabulary. She invited me to her home for coffee, showing me photos of her children and grandchildren while I shared pictures of Amanda's family. When I showed her a photo of Jackson, her expression grew serious. Tu hijo, your son? She asked. I confirmed. Mi hijo. She patted my hand sympathetically, somehow sensing the complicated emotions behind that simple word. During my 4th week, I received an email from Jackson. My heart raced as I opened it in the community center's computer room. Mom, I don't know if you'll get this, But I wanted to let you know that Veronica and I have postponed the wedding. We're having some issues to work through. I keep thinking about our last conversation and how things ended. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I miss you." I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to offer immediate comfort and support, the maternal instinct to soothe his pain. But another part, the new independent Maddie who was emerging in Costa Rica, recognized that this was Jackson's journey to navigate. I wrote a measured response expressing concern, but maintaining boundaries. "I'm sorry to hear you're going through a difficult time. I'm doing well here and finding the work fulfilling. I hope you find clarity about what will truly make you happy." As weeks turned into months, my Spanish improved, my skin tanned, and my confidence grew. I extended my initial 3-month commitment, unable to imagine leaving the community and work I'd come to love. Jackson's emails became more frequent and reflective. He shared that he and Veronica were in counseling, but continuing to struggle. "She keeps talking about optimizing our resources and family efficiency," he wrote. "I'm starting to hear how cold that sounds." 6 months into my Costa Rican adventure, Amanda and her family visited for a week. Watching my grandchildren playing with local children picking up Spanish words faster than I had filled me with joy. "Mom, you look amazing," Amanda said one afternoon as we watched the children play soccer. "I've never seen you this radiant." "I feel amazing," I admitted. "For the first time in decades, I'm not defined by being someone's wife or mother. I'm just Maddie. Jackson asks about you every time we talk," she mentioned carefully. "I think he really regrets what happened." "I know," I sighed, "and eventually we'll work through it, but right now, this is my time." A week after Amanda's visit, I received an unexpected email from a real estate agent in the nearby beach town of Samara, where I sometimes went on weekend excursions with other volunteers. "Ms. Stevens, I'm following up on your inquiry about the small house near Playa Buena Vista. It's still available if you'd like to view it." I hadn't made any such inquiry, but curiosity led me to respond and arrange a viewing. The house was perfect. A modest 2-bedroom cottage within walking distance of the beach, with a small garden and a covered porch ideal for morning coffee and evening contemplation. During the tour, the agent mentioned, "Your daughter was very specific about what you might like. She said good light for reading and space for gardening were priorities." Amanda had arranged the whole thing, knowing I was considering staying longer term. With the proceeds from my Portland house sitting mostly untouched in investments, the cottage was easily affordable. 2 weeks later, I signed the papers. At 68 years old, I had become an expatriate with a home in paradise. I established a small nonprofit organization supporting educational initiatives for local women, using my organizational skills and some of my savings to create opportunities I wished I'd had when raising my children alone. Almost a year to the day after I'd left Portland, I received an email that made my heart skip. "Mom, I've bought a ticket to Costa Rica. Veronica and I have ended our relationship. I'd like to see you if you're willing. I understand if you're not." I sat on my porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, considering my response. The woman I had been a year ago would have immediately offered comfort and support. The woman I had become took time to consider her own needs as well. "I would like to see you too," I finally wrote. "There's a guest room ready whenever you're ready to visit." Jackson arrived 2 weeks later, visibly shocked at my transformation from suburban grandmother to sun-kissed expatriate with a circle of international friends and respected position in the local community. Our reunion was initially awkward, years of patterns and recent wounds creating a distance between us. But gradually, over long walks on the beach and evenings on my porch, we began rebuilding our relationship on new, healthier terms. "Veronica wanted me to be someone I'm not," he admitted one evening. "Watching you create this new life helped me see that I was losing myself trying to meet her expectations." "We all do that sometimes," I replied. "The trick is recognizing it before you disappear completely." By the time Jackson left after his 2-week visit, we had reached a new understanding. Our relationship would never return to what it had been, but perhaps it could evolve into something more balanced, with mutual respect, replacing the old dynamics of caretaking and dependence. The cottage in Samara became my permanent home. I applied for residency, continued my nonprofit work, and built a rich life filled with purpose, friendship, and newfound confidence. Twice yearly, I visited Amanda's family in California, and once a year, I returned briefly to Portland to maintain connections with old friends. Jackson eventually moved to Chicago for a new job, met a kind-hearted teacher named Julia, and started a family built on mutual respect rather than power dynamics. Our relationship continued to heal, though the scars remained as reminders of lessons painfully learned. 2 years after that fateful family meeting, I sat on my beach watching the sunset with Elena, who had become my closest local friend. We were discussing the women's literacy program our organizations had jointly established. "You know," Elena said in her now familiar mix of English and Spanish, "when you first arrived, you looked like someone who had lost everything. Now you look like someone who has found herself." I smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought me here. Sometimes you have to lose what you thought you needed to find what you truly want. Later that evening, I video called with a group of women considering similar volunteer programs, sharing my experience and encouragement. "Was it scary?" one woman asked. "Starting over at your age? Terrifying," I admitted, "but not nearly as scary as staying in a situation where I wasn't valued or respected." As I ended the call, I reflected on the ultimatum that had changed everything. Serve his fiancée or leave quietly. In choosing to leave, but not quietly, I had found a voice, purpose, and joy I never could have imagined. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between your own happiness and someone else's expectations? Share your story in the comments below. And if my journey from doormat to determined has inspired you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of reinvention and renewal. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need a reminder that it's never too late to chart a new course. Thank you for joining me today, and remember, sometimes the most powerful word in any language is simply no.